Not sure what it's like in your neck of the woods, but it's definitely rainy and a little bit warm here in Durham, North Carolina. It's about 60 degrees and definitely some spring-like weather, even though we're in the middle of February, and it's definitely a little bit on the rainy side. But there are a number of things happening in the world, and of course, we do have a special guest today that'll share his love of a certain spirit and all in that way. But we're going to get to some of the news reports, and then, of course, we'll have some other conversations including some of the things that I'm about to mention. But also, we do have our special guest, Jim Lafren, who will be joining us and sharing some of his thoughts as well as his love of that spirit and all in that way. So it should be a fun conversation. Look forward to the next hour or so, but let's see what's happening in the world and all in that way. Kosovo is celebrating its independence with an eye toward reaching a deal with Serbia. So they are celebrating 15 years of independence. And I'm sure that after this is over, Ukraine will be hoping to celebrate something like that in about the 2040s period or something along those lines. So that is definitely something that is going on the world. And apparently, Ukraine is burning through ammunition faster than the U.S. and NATO can produce it. So that war has been going on for a year and is continuing to go on as well. So that's some of the things that we're seeing in the whole notion of what's happening in the world. And of course, later on, Sasha will be doing his show around Ukraine, Russia, and China at 11 o'clock. And of course, we're hoping that he'll pop in here and give us his report as well. Didn't know that a whole nation could be finding entire islands that they didn't know existed, but apparently that's the case in Japan. Japan has discovered 7,000 new unknown islands after a fresh survey. So Japan has seen its number of islands double after a recount. That is a whole lot of islands to be missing and all in that kind of space. Don't know how you managed to do that, but that is what they managed to do. And South Africa is being criticized for naval exercises with both Russia and China. So Russia is going to test missiles in the drills with China and South Africa. So that is some of the things that we're hearing about. And Lufthansa has canceled over 1,300 flights as airport workers have gone on strike. So definitely the whole notion of workers' rights has raised its head in Canada, in Madrid, and now over there in Germany and other places as well. I think it even raised its head in China at one point as well, and may still be raising its head in China also. But that's some of the things that we are seeing. There looks like there is a New Zealand cyclone that is out there, Cyclone Gabriel, and thousands have yet to be contacted after the New Zealand storm took place and all of that. The death toll is actually relatively low, but there are a lot of folks that have not been accounted for as of yet. Only death toll so far is only up to 8, but it is definitely expected to rise. And I said that there were protests around the world. Well, one of those places that there are protests is Iran. That's right. Iran protesters are marching in several cities in the morning for an executed man. And they said that those overnight protests rocked Tehran and other Iranian cities. And the NATO chief on another part of the world says that it is time now for Turkey to ratify Finland and Sweden membership bids. So the definitely a lot of folks are pushing for that to happen, and definitely it seems like Turkey is being the one that is holding that back. For those of you that are looking for a fun activity, there's been a fun activity that has totally been out of place during the pandemic. It is one that a lot of folks enjoy. I know here in the United States, a lot of folks enjoy Mardi Gras. And when I hear people talk about Mardi Gras, one of the places or things that it is compared to, even though apparently this event is a lot more flamboyant, is the Brazil's Carnival. And it is finally being reborn in its full form after the pandemic. So it looks like it's going to come back into its full form. I've never been there, but I've heard from friends of mine that are Brazilian, as well as folks that have actually traveled to that area, that that is an amazing event and one that you might want to try to check out. Maybe that'll be on my wish list. I know that Jim Lafren has some places that are on his wish list as well. So we're going to find out if that is one of them very shortly and all in that way. And by the way, I mentioned Sasha, and Sasha is in Canada, and apparently Canada has deployed Navy vessels to Haiti as violence is worsening over in that area. So Canada is sending naval vessels to Haiti, but they are stopping short of military intervention. So that is one of the things that is going on in the world. And we're going to find out what folks' thoughts are about some of these issues that I have brought up and others as well. By the way, if you're wondering about India, well, India is in the news as well. Indian child marriage crackdown is leaving families in anguish. So that is something that I know has been talked about on this show and other shows as well, because some people have much tighter rules than we do, and all in that kind of way. And it does look like India has been having some space in that activity also. And last but not least, and then I'm going to bring in the special guest. It does look like there has been some health reports around what is going on with the president's health and all along those lines. So we did find out that the president did have his physical. It looks like the physical went well for an 80-year-old man. So who knows? Maybe he's going to make his official announcement very shortly as to whether he is going to come in or not as our, one of the oldest presidents and everything. Because whether it's him or whether Trump wins the bid or whatever, it is definitely no doubt that whether either one of them wins, they will definitely be up in the rankings as one of the oldest presidents that we've had. And I know a lot of folks have been talking about the need and the want for youth leadership and all in that space. So it's going to be interesting to see what folks have to say about some of these news stories and some of the other things that are going on in the world. So I'll definitely bring up Jim Lafren and learn a little bit about what he's got going on and all in that space. And I do know that I've got other folks that will be joining as well. I do see that Lee Newton Rhodes is with me. But before we get started on world issues and all of that, and there might be some other things that I'll get to as well, Jim, I know many years ago, I actually attended a beer drinking school. I mean, that's part of the reputation that you've got if you go to a school in Milwaukee. And I am a Marquette graduate and everything, which of course is there in Milwaukee. But one of the things that I used to enjoy doing, maybe just being a little bit of a childhood kind of person and liking to be a little bit contrary, for lack of a better word, and all of that, was I would go into the bars, and there were a number of bars there and everything, and I would sometimes order a glass of wine, probably because my parents were wine drinkers. I had not fully gotten into the beer drinking space, even though I did later do that and everything, and part of it was just probably a young 19, 20, 21-year-old wanted to be slightly contrary, so I would order some wine at a predominantly beer drinking area and all in that space. And I know that you are the founder of a Chicago-based group that is in that wine space, Winehead Consulting, and all in that kind of way. And you're a longstanding wine importer and distributor, certified wine educator, member of the Society of Wine Educators. And of course, you've done all this great training and teaching. And apparently you visited wine regions in North and South America and Europe. And you said you want to get your bones to Greece, Australia, and South Africa while you're still young enough before, there's other things going on and maybe you're not able to enjoy the drinks as much as you would like, and all in that space. Don't know if you've gotten to Brazil, since I did mention Carnival earlier as well. But if you'd love to share some of your story about how you got into the whole wine industry and all of that, and of course, some of the things that folks might not be aware of within the wine industry as well, we're definitely glad to have you here on World Edition. Like I said, when I sent you the email, a lot of times we hit hitting issues, but sometimes on Friday, I like to break it up with a little bit of other things other than the hard-hitting news. Not to say that we won't get to some of the hard-hitting news as well. But Jim, share a little bit of your thoughts and how you got into wine and how life is treating you in Chicago. I told you it's rainy here in Durham.
Thanks, Mark. It's great to be with you this morning. It's sobering to listen to what's happening around the world.
Right.
But the world has been a crazy place for a very long time. It's had many different iterations of craziness as a culture, as a society, as a planet, as a species, whatever it may be. And there's also the necessity to just turn the dial off and let yourself relax at some point. You have to, you just have to have a way to chill out. And the interesting thing is that humans have been using fermented grape juice to take them somewhere for maybe 10 to 20,000 years. So it certainly is something that human cultures grew up with in most of the world. Uh, and its only purpose, really, the only reason that ancient people continued to go through the trouble of making it or collecting it or finding it, is because it gave them pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
It tasted good. It did something. And, you think about, life was probably fairly tough in those days, whatever days you're talking about. And if you could drink down this beverage that just kind of appeared when grapes got smashed and were left in a pot or a kettle or a skin or whatever, because grapes will spontaneously ferment.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a chance for the average person to just find some relief, some respite. And so it became part of human culture and continued to be so. So
But one
people
thing,
have been enjoying the grape juice for a very long time.
no doubt, one of the things that I've noticed, and I know that we've got some folks on, and maybe one of them will join us later, who is part of the Mormon culture and everything, but definitely those grapes, that wine and everything else have oftentimes had a play within our both play attitude, but also our religious attitude as well. Because I do know that wine and communion are very much a part of a number of religions out there. So I'd just love to hear your thoughts around that, because it definitely does seem to be part of our religious culture as well. Because I do know that within the Catholic Church, the Presbyterian Church, and a number of other churches, that communion is very much a real thing. And sometimes they use real wine, sometimes they use substitutes like grape juice or other things, but that is definitely a real part of the religious lexicon, for lack of a better term.
Well, wine is really a symbol of renewal.
Mm-hmm.
To pre-industrial people, let's say, or ancient people, whatever. When the vines die in the fall, there's nothing that looks deader than a dead, dormant grapevine. And for whatever reason, every spring they come back. It's this renewal. It's this spring, this Mother Nature, really, truly. And so whatever particular god or goddess of agriculture or the seasons or whatever your people believed in or believe in, wine was a gift from that deity to you. Because really, I mean, it was magic. How did this happen? We go pick a bunch of this fruit and it's tasty and nice, but we just throw it in a place, break it up a little, and leave it for a week. And now it's this experience. Now it warms us when we drink it. If we drink a little too much, we can almost communicate with the gods. We can see them more clearly. And that point was in a number of ancient religions, both in Mesopotamia and Egypt, taken to the point where there were ritual drunken festivals. And if you went there to get hammered. And it wasn't to be sloppy, but what it was a way for you to communicate with the god, whatever temple this was. And so it was a very special event. It maybe only happened once a year. And the common person would actually have an ability to interact with the god. Mm-hmm. So very interesting history here with this little bottle of juice.
Definitely sounds like it and everything. I'm bringing in my other panelists, and I do have two of them with me and everything very shortly. But at what point did you get involved in the wine industry? I kind of told you about my story of being, I think my first sip of wine was actually when I was in high school, was actually from either parents or friends of parents, and all in that line. And then, of course, when I went to school, I was being a little bit, as I said earlier, contrary and drinking wine in a beer drinking area, even though I'm not going to say that I didn't drink beer there as well. But when did you first get involved in the wine industry, and what are some of your favorite wines?
Well, I started actually much as you did. My parents were not wine drinkers. They would have a couple of cocktails on New Year's, or maybe Christmas with some neighbors or whatever. But, the old man did keep a jug of wine under the kitchen sink, though. And when he'd had a particularly annoying or stressful day, he'd come home and he'd get that jug out from under the kitchen sink, where God knows in the summer, without air conditioning, that was some pretty ruined wine by that point, some pretty intense stuff. And he'd pour himself a little drink, and he'd just stand at the sink and pound that back, put that screw cap back on the bottle and stick it back under there. So it was a pretty funny introduction to wine.
Yeah, sounds like it.
Yeah, it was a great story. But I just, my palate, Mark, I think fairly early, kind of went toward wine, as opposed to, when you're in your teens, and in my day anyway, everyone was drinking beer, and that was the big thing. And, you go out in the woods with a bunch of people and half a dozen cases of beer or keg or whatever you could round up. And that was all right, but I never was crazy about beer. But then when I tasted wine at that point, it intrigued me. And so then I just became gradually more interested in it. I was doing some business consulting at one point, and I was working with a guy who was he owned a little importer distributor company, wine company. And we had actually met at a tasting group, and he asked me if I would take over the operation of his company. So that was my first actual job in the wine world,
Gotcha. And is there a favorite wine? I'm bringing in Lee Newton Rhodes and Dr. Dan Worthington.
Oh boy, favorite wine. I don't know. There's so many great wines. It's it's the old, what's your favorite child thing. It kind of depends on the situation, maybe the time of year, what you're having for food to go with it. I'm pretty ecumenical in my palate, but if I could only pick one wine, it would probably be a nice hearty red wine of some sort.
Gotcha.
And there's so many wonderful places to visit. Vineyards tend to be in really beautiful locations. So, for someone who's a traveler or interested in other cultures, be it generally or other countries specifically, entering that whole other world of that country through their wine and through their vineyards and through their wine story is pretty interesting and pretty welcoming,
Yeah.
But,
Good morning, Jim.
And one of the places you said you hope to visit is Australia. So I'm actually going to bring in Shaquille, because he's actually from Australia, or lives in Australia now. He's lived in other places as well, but I know that that's one of your wish lists and everything. So he's not in Australia currently. He's actually traveling the world and all in that space. But
I'm not
Shaquille
sure how well you guys can hear me.
I'm not sure where Shaquille's at now. Shaquille, where are you at now? But I know that Jim, our guest, is a wine connoisseur and everything, and he's definitely stated on his page that Australia is on his wish list of places to visit. Shaquille, can you hear us?
all right. So who's the author
Can you
here?
wave? Yeah, Jim, can I ask you a question, please?
Sure.
Yeah, you spoke about wine and the taste of wine, what have you. Is there a health aspect of it in white versus red that it is good for a person in moderation to drink?
Well, let me preface that with the caveat that you threw in at the end, that drinking to excess is never bright for any reason. We don't live in ancient times when we were members of a religion that had enforced ritual drunkenness, So barring that, there's really...
You've been on college campuses, haven't you?
No,
Dorm
I
life.
haven't actually. No.
Okay.
But What was the question again?
The health
Drinking
aspects
wine,
of
whether white or red, is there a health aspect of it where it's good for the body, good for the heart?
Well, there's a feeling that red wines have more resveratrol, which is the element that helps. It's an antioxidant, a very strong one. So red wine does have more of that. White wine has some, but I think if you're drinking only for health reasons, then you would probably lean toward red wines. And the ones that have the deepest color grapes tend to have more of what you're looking for, because the color comes from the skins, from the polyphenols that are in the grape skins primarily, and to some smaller degree in the pulp of the grape. But the deeper the color, that's kind of a general indicator that you have a lot of polyphenols in that wine, that a lot of color has leached out of those skins. And so a lot
Can you not get those benefits? Can you not get those benefits by eating the grapes directly?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
You can.
I don't know if fermentation releases something in particular in the juice or changes the molecular structure of something. I'm not really sure.
You can get the same benefits from just drinking grape juice, dark grape juice.
Well, Jim, definitely glad you were able to join. Like I said, I definitely wanted to give a little bit of a other thing going on. And hopefully you'll stick around and definitely share some of your other stories as we get into some of the news and everything. I know that Sasha's with us, and he might have a report about what's going on in the Ukraine and all in that space and everything, but don't have to go away. We might even have some folks that have some other questions for you as well, but I do want to get to some of the other news items as well. One of them, of course, being the quote unquote clean bill of health that President Biden got. So that probably means that he might be jumping into the race and all of that. I am going to bring in, and hopefully he's ready, Shaquille, and hopefully he'll be able to come on, because I know that he is from Australia and he might have some thoughts both about the wine as well as about the other things that are going on. Because I think you mentioned on your bio that Australia, and I think there were some other countries that you're hoping to visit that you haven't visited yet, and all in that space. So Shaquille, can you hear us? And do you have any thoughts? Mr. Jim is there, and it definitely said that Australia is on his wish list of.
I can hear you guys. I can hear you guys. I'm hoping that you can hear me.
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you.
In the air. Oh no, that's fine. Up here, please. Thank you. Yes.
Shaquille, we can hear you and your staff.
Sorry. I thought in light of the conversation.
You're freezing now. You're frozen, Shaquille.
He's frozen in the air.
Yeah, I want to point out that that Biden's physical didn't make him any smarter, and it didn't make him any more clairvoyant or clear-minded. Right? He is what he is. So anyway, and Jill does not want him running because she knows his situation.
Yeah, I just want to make one more comment to Jim, if you may. This is not a religious show, but in the Bible, I think the first case of wine and someone getting intoxicated was with Noah, by the ark afterwards. Am I wrong?
Correct. No, you're right. Yes. Noah planted vines after they were able to hit dry land, or after the flood receded. And yeah, it's one of the great drunken stories of history. He apparently got pretty hammered on his first vintage and was laying naked in his hut or something, and his sons came in and
Right.
Said, "Hey, come on, Dad." So
And he known it would be in books forever.
yeah.
Yeah, no clue about that. Hey, Sasha, if you tell some of the things that are going on, I know there have been reports about how Ukraine is burning through the munition faster than even the NATO and the West can send them there. So I know that you'll be talking about that at the 11 o'clock news hour, but I also know that you are one that has been known to have a sip of various items as well. So if you want to speak to Jim on that, but I definitely want to hear about
Sasha's back. Yeah, just
going
up
on
there.
in the Ukraine as well.
Well, to kill 200,000 Russians require a lot of ammunition, and when they will kill next 200,000, it will require even more ammunition.
Sasha, I have to make a point at this juncture that it would be more efficient for the Allies just to drop the bombs directly and deliver them personally to the Russians rather than ship them over and then let the Ukrainians do it?
Well, of course, if that would be the case, I think the West and the United States would use somewhat different weapons than what.
Oh, yeah, they would.
It would be different weapons. However, it would be a very different political situation, and it requires, you see, the West, for various reasons, is very careful not to upset Putin to such a degree that he may go berserk and actually start nuclear war, the complete thermonuclear exchange. You can't rule it out anyway. You always understand that this is a threat, and this is a threat that 3 generations of people in the West lived under the threats. And now with skillful and fearless Ukrainian army, you can get rid of yourself as a threat once and for all. For the next 500 years, there will be no more threat. So all you have to do is to provide. Ukraine is not asking for troops of NATO to join and to fight for Ukraine. Absolutely not. Never did. All they want is access to complete weapons required to a successful attack and victory. And in their understanding, the victory is just to get Russians out of the Ukrainian territory. They're not saying that, no, we want to defeat Russia. We want to go all the way to Moscow, to St. Petersburg, and take over Russia. Never said so. Don't have that aspirations. But as a minimum, they want to get Russian troops out of Ukraine, which is their country, their territory, and there's no reason to believe that they're not entitled to it. So all you have to do is to provide Ukraine with military help and allow it to completely defeat Russia, because getting their forces out of Ukraine, it is a humiliation, and it's obviously for Russia.
Sasha, good morning. How long has this war been going on?
Sorry?
Over a year.
How long has the war been going on in Ukraine with Russia, approximately?
There are two numbers. Number one, this recent Russian invasion, it's about a year, on 24th of
Does anyone want to win it?
It would be 1 year. Now, they started their aggression in 2014 by annexing.
No, I understand that. But this recent one for a year, does anyone want to win? Seems like to me they're playing tiddlywinks over there, and they're just building up arms, destroying them, and killing people. But no one wants to win. Why are we in a war that we don't want to win?
I'm so sorry, but this is a very naive and very distorted view.
Why is that?
There. Why? Because there are very fierce fighting going on every day. Every day, hundreds of lives are being taken. About yesterday, for example, 730 people, Russian soldiers, were killed. Some of them.
I understand that.
Yeah. Now
it's very sad whenever the lives are, but just get it over with already.
How?
That's one reason we didn't go into Japan, because of all the lives that would have been lost had we not dropped the bombs. Vietnam just went on for years. For what purpose? Afghanistan. What did we go there for? We just backed out.
Hey,
the United States should not be involved with something if they don't want to win.
No, it's a different story. If Vietnam would attack United States and threatening its territory, its people, it would be a very different fight. And you probably the first one who would join the
Tell
army.
it to the boys who went to Vietnam.
So here is a case. Ukraine is defending its territory, its people.
No, I understand it. So either give them the weapons they need to push back Russia, or don't. But don't give it to an allowance every week.
Hold on, but you know very well that only 1/3 of Republican support to provide weapons to Ukraine. 2/3 are not. So this is going to go into each time a round of negotiations and here and there. That weakens the anti-Russian position and coalition tremendously because they
Up until recently, the Democrats had all three houses. Did they not?
Yeah, and they were providing capable finances and ammunition. Maybe they could provide more. But again, each time, even they had majorities, they had to negotiate the each upcoming package over and over again. And same thing will happen from now on. Now they have majority of Republicans in House, so it's going to be again.
Ukraine is totally dependent on the United States. Aren't there other countries? Where's the UN?
The other countries are helping much more than the United States. They're
No, they're
providing.
not.
No, they do. Not in total numbers, but per capita of their.
Yeah. So that's
Yes,
your
they
argument. But
Yes,
they're
they
not.
do.
They're not coming anywhere close to the amount of assistance the United States is providing per capita, maybe, but
Yeah.
that's not the point. In total numbers, the U.S. is supporting Ukraine more than the rest of the world in combined.
Hey,
Combined.
Dan, hey, hold on a second. Hold on a second, Dan and Sasha and everybody else, including our guest and everything. I did want to ask about
Morning, Kim.
another part of the war and everything that is going on in that space, which is the whole notion of Kosovo, which apparently on today is celebrating their independence from Serbia. And apparently Serbia does not recognize Kosovo's statehood, neither does Russia, surprise there, China, or 5 other European Union countries, including Spain, Slovakia, Cyprus, Romania, and Greece. And apparently that's halted their path to EU membership. So I'm just wondering, how important is this notion of Kosovo statehood, one, to the war in Ukraine, and 2, to just the whole stability of that region? Because they've been celebrating, like I said earlier, for 15 years of independence. And that's what we're hoping that at some point Ukraine will be able to say as well. But what is that relationship with Russia, and is this
Hear
part
me,
of
this
the collapse of the
is,
Russian?
I believe
empire?
there is no point to compare what's happening in Ukraine and war with Russia, which right now it's on its magnitude is very close to Second World War fights. And what's happening in Kosovo, and there are some diplomatic missions, there are some discussions. There's some people believe that it's part of Serbia, and some other people believe no. I mean, there is no comparison. Same thing like you will compare World Soccer Championship with the local, I don't know, for better word, skating competition, for example. It's just it's different magnitude, different. Everything is different, Mark. So you should try. You know, I think we want to refocus our attention from Ukraine to something else. Do it, but there are some skillful way of doing that.
Like I said, I just knew they were both tied into the same region, so that's why I brought it up.
It's
And
not the
everything.
same
I was going
region,
to get to
period.
some other parts
No,
of
if
the
you
world
would
as
know,
well.
if you
I
would
know
know
that you got
your
the Ukrainian
geography,
show
you
later
would
on.
easily see that it's not the same regions. It's all located in Europe. That's you can say, but geographically speaking, they're different regions. Where is Ukraine and where is the Serbia? Where is the Kosovo? It's no association, no common border. I mean, nothing you can tie it up. But if you want to do it, please do. I don't want to rain on your parade.
No, like I said, Kim, I see that the boss has arrived here, as Shaquille and all that. I did see that you toasted our other guest with some wine going on, so I did see that you had some wine there, as did Shaquille. So I don't know if you had.
Oh
any
no, not wine, not wine.
pass to the campaign,
Too
yes.
early.
Really?
And I'm not on
Yeah,
vacation,
thank
but
you.
you know, guys, I want to thank you for all of the work that you put in to these talk shows and getting the information out there
We
globally,
have the bottle.
because I feel like that we're sending out the right message to the people. We're up to 350,000 views this week, and I just want to congratulate everyone for getting up every day and getting out here and just sharing this wonderful information. Thank you.
No, glad to do it. I know this.
Thank you for the update.
It's great to bring
That's
amazing
fine.
guests and all of that. And definitely a great conversation. Hey, Lee, I do have a question, and this is
Sure.
Sasha just brought up and everything, and changing the topic slightly and everything. But how do you lose several countries? Because then when I saw that news story, and I'm going like, wait a minute, Japan didn't know that they had these islands and everything? Because apparently they've added a bunch of islands. They've almost doubled their island size. And I'm going like, how do you go around and not know that you've got these amount of islands and all in that space? Maybe Shaquille's got some ideas, but or other folks. Because when I saw that news story, I'm going like, that's a doubling of your size almost. And everything. It seems to me you should already have that knowledge, but apparently they did some reassessment and they discovered 7,000 new unknown islands. So apparently there was a lot of islands that were hiding there in the Pacific Ocean, but I'm trying to figure out how that happened. So if anybody's got any ideas, let us know, because I know.
Yeah, there's a link on Fox.com. I didn't read it yet, but I'm not sure that they're all above water. So it might have been through some studies.
That's true. So some of these islands might be like Atlantis type islands that are underneath the water and all in that space. So maybe that's what's going on. But yeah, I was just fascinated when I saw that they discovered 7,000 new islands. Maybe they were having, maybe the first time they counted, they didn't have enough wine. Maybe that's what was going on. So maybe that's what happened in that regards. But it'll be interesting to see folks' thoughts about that going on in the world. I'm sure that Dan might have some theories as well. Theories from Dan and Orchard here.
Oh, they're just, I just imagine they're just trying to declare their sovereignty on areas that they claim before somebody else does, like the Chinese, right?
Yeah.
Or the North or Koreans or whomever. So I think every country tries to designate what their territorial waters are and what their territories comprise of, and just so that they can make it a part of the record.
Yeah, that makes sense. Hey, I want to come back to Sasha on another part of the world, but it deals still with Russia, because it actually surprised me and everything. The fact that China did military drills with Russia did not surprise me. That's two communist countries, socialist, whatever, and political system they want to claim to be part of and everything. But they also did it with South Africa, which is supposed to be one of our allies and everything. So were you surprised that South Africa was joining in these military drills with Russia? And what is South Africa's whole position with Russia? Because when I saw that, it actually surprised me that they were involved in these military drills along with China.
I'm wondering, did South Africa committed all its military force to these exercises? How could they do exercises with Russia? And even Russia is not a great deal now, because they're committed to Ukraine, where they're taking heavy losses of about 1,000 people a day. Okay, so China is doing its exercises. I'll tell you one thing, that I think China is getting a good message out of Ukrainian war. The message is not even military so much as economical. The military, of course, if West would fully commit it, if they would send a few F-35 fighters, the war would be over in a matter of 48 hours. Of course, they're careful not to Putin, although Putin has already been annoyed to such a degree.
Sasha, what did you say about the war being over?
That can be annoyed, right? Sorry, what did you say?
What did you say about the war being over in a few hours if they send something?
Don't understand the question.
You said if they send some fighters over there, the war could be over in a very short period of time. Why don't they just do it then?
Because they don't want to instigate a World War III.
But then the war won't be over.
It wouldn't.
It's kind of a very funny situation. Now the West and United States are committed to finish this war as soon as possible and to get Russia defeated. However, tactically, they don't want to overcommit to this war, to send the latest technology planes like F-35 or so on. So they're very careful to be on the offensive. At the same time, they don't want to cross some lines. They are imaginary lines. There are no lines anymore in a war like this. In Second World War, there were no lines. Everything was whatever you could help you to win would work. In this situation, technically speaking, Russia still fights only Ukraine. Although they're making noises, no, we are fighting all NATO because NATO is committed and it's helping Ukraine and so on. Well, give me a break. If you fight NATO, the fight would be over a long time ago. It doesn't matter, conventional war, nuclear war, it just doesn't matter. And in fact, for what now I'm getting certain information that it's not even a sure thing that Russian nuclear warheads are ready to be used, because it's been a long time and they haven't did any testing. The maintenance is quite tricky. And by the way, maintenance is done by all Ukrainians or former Ukrainians, because all those nuclear weapons were built in Ukraine. And 1994, thanks to infamous Budapest Treaty or Budapest Agreement, they were all transferred to Russia, but Russia still doesn't know really how to maintain them and so on. So they're saying, oh, we don't know, we don't want to deal with that. Let's Ukrainians deal with that. So I'm not sure even that Ukrainians will follow the orders from Putin or elsewhere to start using these nuclear weapons again, especially against Ukraine. Now the plutonium isotope, I think it's good to be stored for about, I think, close to 30 years, and uranium for 18 years. So they have to be meticulously maintained. They have to change the this isotopes from time to time. And I don't think that with all the corruption and all the stealing which is going on in the Russian army, I even don't think that they take proper maintenance of their nuclear arsenal. But that's beside the point. I wish there will never be a revelation whether they are good to use or not.
Well, that's apparently what they're trying to do on this warship test. By the way, it is the navies that are doing this test. So it's the South African Navy and the Russian and Chinese warships. And apparently they are going to test missiles in the drills as well. Now, whether those missiles are just missiles that are non-nuclear or nuclear, that I'm not quite clear on, but they are saying that they're going to test missiles in this drill that is taking place over this weekend and everything.
Mark, and the missiles will be most likely Chinese. I don't think that Russians will try their missiles, because if they're not working, that's the end of story. I think that's a day where NATO, Ukraine, and all other countries just invade Russia and will just take it out.
All of this war and war and war and war, where I usually go with this. You men need to find something better to do. But
there are women involved too.
There needs to be a motto in these countries that say my country is worth living for. And maybe men should have been able to be given the ability to give birth, and they would value life a little bit more. But I am so sick of these people who think they're better than everyone and have to go out and do this.
Kim. That's diatribe too. Men value life as much as women do. And you have to remember that men have overwhelmingly given their life for freedom where they weren't required to have women do the same thing. Why? Because historically it's been the duty of men to protect their country.
But it's not about
so,
that.
So when you say those kinds of things, you dishonor the sacrifice of those who have died.
I never dishonor a sacrifice of a warrior. I dishonor the decisions.
Nation.
I dishonor.
It's not all about the men who are making these decisions. There are women in these organizations nationally too. There are.
I don't dishonor any warrior. I dishonor the decisions of leaders who build up war. I dishonor that. I disrespect.
Yeah, you're right about that. And it's because
it's not the warriors, because they have
the military-industrial complex and the money and the corruption.
Kim, I agree with you. Kim, I agree with you. But unfortunately, there are those who don't, and evil exists, and also our lives, our liberties, our freedoms are worth dying for. Not because we want to, because the other side wants to take them away from us.
That's why we got all this war.
Kim,
I think they all got COVID on their brain, and that's why we have
COVID on their brain.
It hasn't stuck to their brain. It's spreading.
COVID. They should just do away with him. Put him in a home. Do away with him.
Well, Biden, he should be put away.
Do you remember what's happened in the Second World War? There was a maniac in Germany who activized all the horrible, the violent elements in his country, came to power, by the way, legally, and committed all world, and specifically Europe, to a horrible, horrible war. And there was nothing you could do about that. Here you have Russia, a country of 140 million people and a huge territory, has been taken hostages by someone by the name Mr. Putin. And Mr. Putin is now committed to first destabilize the West with what he did, for example, in Georgia. He did it in Ukraine in 2014. And he gets away with everything. There was nothing really that West would have done to stop him. Right there. Come on, Mr. Putin. Get back your armies from Georgia, from Ukraine, from just leave it alone. No, there was nothing to that, because there was a time of President Obama in power, and all what Obama did, he says Russia is second-rated power. That's all what he's done to stop Putin.
Hey, just along those same lines,
Second rated. He's done some horrific things, just like Hitler did, and they, eventually, I guess we have to go in and shut him down. But I just think if people just took the motto of, I value my country and want to live instead of I'll die for it, I'll live for it.
But Kim, one of the things hold on a second, Kim. One of the things I was going to ask is sometimes countries, whether it's men or women, play these political games with things that are going on. Because I think that we're seeing that in another part of Europe as well. Because definitely Finland's NATO membership and everything, as well as Sweden's, are all somewhat based on what is going on in Turkey's hands and everything. And there is some people that are saying that maybe Sweden is playing some tit for tat because Turkey just had that recent earthquake and everything, and there is some diplomacy going on in that space. And maybe there are some people that are saying that Sweden is not coming to the aid of Turkey as fast as they might have in the past because of the fact that Turkey is the holding vote to what is going on in the sense of Finland and Sweden joining NATO. So that sounds like some tit for tat politics to me that could be very detrimental to the people there in Turkey, as well as just the region in general. So that's to your point. People playing some leadership kind of game.
I would like to ask you a question. Everything what you said, it's very hard to argue. It's very reasonable and in fact quite popular position. But unless Mr. Putin would hear you out and follow you at least a little bit, then one can say that you got some mileage out of everything what you said. But if Putin is not listening to you, and it doesn't matter that all the rest of the world does listen to you and agrees with you, where is the beef? All that plus 75 cents will buy a cup of coffee. That's all there is to it. Isn't it right?
Hey, Mark,
how many of you actually believe that the balloons were sent here to spy?
Yeah, of course. 100%.
I'm curious. All
the can you bring up Shaquille, please?
Have our tablets, our computers, everything have microchips from China. Don't you think they have enough information about us that the balloon is just a ploy? It's stupid.
Yeah, but it shouldn't be happening though. The fact that they could do that. Good morning, everybody.
What was there party balloons that just got loose?
Could it just be a ploy to get our attention because they know we're stupid enough to go, oh, squirrel?
But I think that was Nikki Haley.
Could it be a ploy?
I went back real quickly. We're bringing Shaquille Latimer on, and good morning.
He dropped again.
Closing out, but
he
Nikki
keeps
Haley,
dropping.
I went back and watched Nikki Haley's remarks, and she talks a lot about just a completely broken foreign policy. The fact that we've got weapons from North Korea facing us, the fact that China is our ultimate enemy, that they're sending balloons and staring us down in the face. That we're in the middle of, Iran now is going to be working on a nuclear weapon. But she was a part of a lot of those administration decisions when Trump was in the White House. Sort of interesting. She's distancing herself. But I felt like her speech was actually stronger. I do think that if she did win the nomination, pulled off a miracle, she would be a very legitimate contender for the White House.
Steve,
Steve, is she past her
Steve, 1
prime?
second. Steve, just really quickly, is it
No,
just
she's only
is it just the
21 years
world
old.
politics, or is it
I'm
even
just
our
kidding,
politics in
based
the
on
US?
Don Lemon.
We talked about Ohio and that train derailment, and I know that Pennsylvania, some of the other states,
Lemon was being a racist.
are concerned about what is going on around our
Again.
infrastructure here in the United States.
Yes,
So is
sir.
it just our foreign policy, or is it several of our policies that are broken? That's the question I had for Steve and everything, because definitely
she's a
I know
liberal,
that
she-
Pennsylvania, and I forget one of the other states that is near Ohio, is saying, hey, this could just be the beginning of the problem with the train system.
Oh, I think it's we have infrastructure issues in America. I think that this is just the tip of the
I
iceberg.
think it was sabotage.
I don't know.
Steve,
Steve,
do you want to comment on the administration? We have Pete Buttigieg in charge of transportation. You have Kamala Harris in charge of the border. Is there anyone there that's competent?
No,
Who's serving drinks? Maybe that they can do.
there's nobody competent. You know that. I think you answered your own question by asking the question.
I can't speak to their competency as the moderator of the show, but I will say that there has been issues that they're dealing with. I mean, the border is still not being fixed. Buttigieg's been very quiet about these train derailments. I haven't heard from him recently.
Well, it's sort of like the Forrest Gump rule. Stupid is what stupid does, right? And that describes exactly the Biden administration and all their clowns. Everybody from the guy who tries to look like a girl that steals clothes from the airplanes, and they're stupid.
Dan, what does it say when the president's spokesman says that the president Biden is the best speaker in the administration?
God, it just really.
What is she thinking?
Well, like you said, there's all kinds of issues going on.
And speaking of presidents,
If I only had a brain to take a
President Day is Monday, so we're going to be doing our President's Day.
We actually have a guest coming in that's going to talk about President's Day, because I have a President's Day scholar coming in on that day, just to let y'all know, and he's got some interesting stories about past presidents, including one that might have had a pet raccoon and some other things that are going on. But there will be a guest that talks about President's Day on President's Day on the 20th. But one of the questions I got for you, and I definitely wanted Jim to have any closeouts that he might have. He's been observing this lovely conversation that we've had and all in that space. So before you go to the closeout, I definitely want him to give some closing words. But my quick question to you is, I'm hearing rumors that Manchin might be running, but not as a Democrat, but as an independent, which would then make the notion of what you said of the easy road for the Democrats to come back in if Trump is in the candidate. I would argue that if Manchin is the candidate, that makes the Republicans have an easy road in, because that would split the Democratic vote.
That would.
Well, there's also rumors that Manchin's going to run for governor of West Virginia, and that he's doing this just to get lots of name recognition because Jim Justice is terming out, and he doesn't. I don't think Joe Manchin can get reelected. I think that it's going to be really hard for him now with last minute deals on.
I could run as a Republican and get elected.
Steve, your background looks like you're in the Oval Office. Am I right?
No, it's my
the windows.
Background, but that does look a little bit better, It's
It could be him running as president before we get ready to get out here. I know we got.
Yeah,
So you got your flags up.
I got 25 to 30 years now, so I'm taking my time to get to the Oval Office.
Yeah, you've got till the you got plenty of time to get there. Jim, you've heard some of the observations, some of the things going on before we turn it over to Steve for closeout. I didn't know if you have any thoughts about the world, but also the love of wine, since that is why I brought you in, to try to bring a little bit of a lighter note to our beginning of the show and everything. But definitely I've enjoyed some of your observations. But if you've got any observations around wine, life, culture, or anything else, and then we'll toss it over to Steve for the closeout.
Well, I'll try to segue for you. The region in the world that is considered to be the homeland of wine, where wine was first made, first recognized, the oldest archaeological remains of wine are in the country of Georgia. And Georgia, of course, was under the thumb of the Soviet Union for many years.
Song.
Stalin was Georgian. And they're incredible people. They have a 8,000-year history of fighting off one invader after another, sometimes being captive for as long as 100 or 200 years in that 8,000 years. They are just they're amazing people. They are they're Georgian Orthodox, which is its own religion, but it's tied up in a fable about wine, and they see wine as their right, and it's something they make by fermenting it in the earth. They have a very unique way of making wine, and historically, every Georgian household, at least out in the country, had one of these terracotta vessels called a qvevri. And it's kind of like the old style tops you used to play with when you were a kid, the tops that are shaped like a heart three-dimensionally. So this is terracotta. It might be 6 feet tall, and they bury them in the ground. And then they have an incredible array of grapes that grow nowhere else in the world. And they use, so I mean, the wine culture is everything. But there are people who are so glad to be out from the Soviet, I can't say sphere, because Russia tried to invade them again in 2008 and captured territory and so forth. But they're in their language, to say hello really means may you have victory today. That's their term for just saying hello, because
That's
they
a
have
good hello, actually.
What's that?
That's a good hello, unless they come with a sword. And
Yeah. and the warriors used to. I mean, they were subjugated by the Mongols, by the Russian people, by Turks, by Greeks originally. So very, very, and
I
they
appear to have internet connection for a few minutes, so
gave up their
I'll
own
just say
religion.
to Jim, I'll just say to Jim, it's lovely to meet
Shaquille, how are you?
Sort off. I'm sorry, I'm on
So what I was saying, they never gave up their own religion, even when they were
Hammered.
slaughtered. And they
But
were
I
frequently
heard
slaughtered.
you
They're just amazing
talking
people,
about red
amazing, strong people.
wine, so I had a red wine for
Okay,
you.
stop.
So anyway,
Before the end of the
when Russia invaded Georgia in 2008, the thing that stopped it ultimately was that Bush sent an aircraft carrier into the Eastern Mediterranean, and that shut it right down. And he told Russia, I don't remember if Medvedev or Putin was in power then, that was the end of it. And so Georgia is the place where you can be walking on the street and someone will come up to you and go, "Are you an American?" Now, in many of the world's capitals, the answer is no, not me, because you're usually sticking out like a sore thumb and people are looking to do you harm. But here they say, "Are you an American?" Yes. I've had people stop me, I just want to shake your hand. You guys saved our bacon. And, when Bush brought that aircraft carrier into the Mediterranean, that's what ended the war. And we'll never forget that. In fact, the long boulevard that goes from downtown Tbilisi out to the airport is called George Bush Boulevard.
Well, George,
So a little.
Jim, we're asking the same question here with the open southern border, asking people if they're Americans.
What's that?
Good.
well,
With
it's
the open southern border, we have to ask people when you see them, are you an American over here in America? More and more or not.
well, Jim, thank you for being with us today. We're getting ready for closeout. We're at the hour, but I'm sorry I was late today. But my Mark, if you could bring me in for the closeout, and we want to thank everyone for being with us today. This weekend, as we get ready for President's Day, our President's Day edition, start thinking about.
Oh, hold on. I did wrong.
There's only been 45 presidents of the United States. They've all been men. The only requirements are that they're 35 years of age, that they are citizens of the United States, and that they're born in the United States or have resided for 14 years up until they run. We're going to be talking about some of the presidents, the good ones, the bad ones, and we're going to guest talking about that. We didn't talk today about President Trump's investigation on the Georgia elections. Tesla's recalling about 360,000 cars. all kinds of stuff going on in the world, and we're going to be talking about that on Monday. Want to thank you for being with us, and we will be back on Monday for our President's Day edition on Roku and Pod TV. Hail to the Chief. Thank you all so much. Looking forward to seeing you all on Monday.